for us. Recording is in progress. I see Lynn. I see everybody. Here comes the people. Whoopsie daisy. Pushing buttons already. All right, I lost my little counter. I don't know why it, oh, there it is. All right. Hey, we got 97 people. Hello, welcome. If you're here, oh, I got the poll screen up. Hold on. If you're here for facilitating difficult conversations, you're in the right place. We opened the doors a couple minutes early so we can hopefully get everybody started. Sit back for a second, relax, make sure you got some coffee if you're able to, and we'll get started really soon with a poll. So we're expecting about 400 people on. We cannot see you. Hopefully you can see us and you can hear us. If you can't, the chat box is open and you can let us know. And we already have a chat, Lynn. I love it. Good morning, Kathy Brunton says. Hi, Kathy Brunton. Summit County is representing. Thank you. Kind of wish I could hear you, Kathy Brunton. All right. We're looking forward. There we go. Hello, Vicky. They're all going to say hi now. Oh, not enough coffee yet. Good morning, everybody. The way we have the chats set up today, you guys can choose to chat with everyone or hosts and panelists. We also have Q&A open. If you see down at on your toolbar, it is right next to chat, and that stands for questions and answers. If you have a question regarding our training or something, please try to remember to put those in the Q&A. And if you see somebody else asked a great question and you want more information on that, please upvote that with clicking the thumbs up. That way we'll be able to prioritize which questions we answer. Obviously, this is one of those trainings that a lot of individualized questions will come up. We certainly won't be able to answer everything. But we'll try our best. If you just want to chat or share something, you can put that in the chat box. We'll be looking at that also, but we're not going to really be addressing questions as much from there, unless it's about a technical thing. So, all right, we've got 185 people on. I'm going to go ahead and while you're all waiting, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. I hope you can all see it. This poll is really about how thinking about yourself and your skills with facilitating difficult conversations. We've got a lot of good skills listed here of people and difficult conversations. So what do you think are the two most important in general? And I've got it listed on the big screen now too for you. Empathy, transparency. So pick two: clear communication, active listening, positive attitude, problem solving, receptive to feedback, body language, handling stress under pressure. Those are all great things. There's no wrong answer here. Pick the two that you think are the most important. In the second question, we want you to look at those same exact skills and qualities, and we want you to tell us which one is the hardest for you. Obviously, we're going to try to cover that today. And that might be the area that you might want to ask questions about. How to get better at some of those things, because I see you guys are there's lots of different things that are hard for different people, and that's going to be the name of the game today. So, and then in the third question, which one are you good at? We know you're already good at a lot of things, right? So tell us which one you are proud of, that you're good at and you think you do a great job. All right, it looks like people that came on have ability to see the poll. I see I have 222 participants now, so I'm going to leave that open for a minute while we're waiting for everybody to come in, and then we'll get started. So, Lynn, how do you think they all look today? Don't you wish we could see their faces, Lynn?
I do wish we could see their faces.
Oh, man, it just drives me crazy.
I hope they're excited as we are.
Yeah. We're getting good answers. If you're just coming in, there's a poll open. Please go ahead and answer it. This is definitely a personal opinion thing. There's no wrong answers on our poll. Pick two of the most important skills in facilitating difficult conversations. Pick the skill that's hardest for you, and pick the one thing you think you're best at. All right. I'm going to give it another minute or so because we have about 234 on, and I don't want to get started before we actually have as many people on. We will be recording this for those of you who know somebody that wanted to be here and couldn't be here. We'll be sharing the recording on Member Connect at the Document Center under the session, along with the PDF of the PowerPoint. I also will be putting the PDF of the PowerPoint in the chat box soon. If you can't download it, don't stress out. Some people seem to have technical problems with that. Some people don't. Don't stress out. It will be on Member Connect, so you will be able to get it off there also. And I'm always available to email things out. So, all right. I think I'm going to go ahead. We got 200 responses on our poll, so I think I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. We have about 250 people in the meeting. I'm going to share the results so you know who's in the room with you. Okay. So it looks like we think the most important things are active listening, empathy, clear communication. I love those. Those are all things we're going to really talk about today a little bit. Problem solving. I love that, right? That's another really important one. And I love those other ones. Which skill is hardest for you? Boy, this is a tight one, you guys. Ooh, handling stress under pressure. Absolutely. In the moment, right? When you're upset or you're feeling, defensive, attacked, whatever, boy, is that hard. Or it's an emergency. What do we do? So thanks for letting us know that, but it's lots of people good at different things. And then when you talk about it, let's see, the overwhelming thing that us as SSAs is we are empathetic. Wow. You got it. I think you guys nailed it on, that is definitely one of our best things. And I see we also have some people that feel that they're really good with listening. They're really good with a positive attitude. So you have friends amongst you, and we see handling stress under pressure is probably one of the things that we all struggle with. All right. Well, I guess that's our next training, Lynn. How do you handle stress under pressure, right? We are going to talk a little bit about that. So, okay, I am going to stop sharing that. And if I can get rid of my poll, I don't know how to do that on my screen. Give me a second. Okay, why is that showing like that?
Lisa, can we get the closed captioning on?
Oh, thank you. Hold on, I'm going too fast. I'm trying to find my little screen. There we go. I am so glad for whoever always asks me that because I forget. Okay, so enable, no, where is my closed captioning? Hold on. Live transcript. That's what it's called, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. Enable. Okay. Sorry that I didn't do that earlier. Thank you very much. For some reason, are you guys still seeing the poll on your screen? Okay, that's just me. Okay. Well, I won't worry about it then, right? We won't worry about it. We'll just keep going. All right. Quick introductions. We've got some great people that were presenters and people that contributed on this. So we have Amanda Brooks. Give a little wave. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, good morning.
You want to tell them your title? Because I will never remember it.
Sure. So I'm a regional support facilitator with DODD. I work mainly down in the Southwest region of Ohio. So happy to see everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristina Gaible.
Hello, everyone.
Kristina's from APSI, and we really welcome her today. Everybody should give her a pat on the back and a kudos in the chat box. She is on vacation and still joining us. So, and she's from APSI. And I mean, who doesn't need a vacation more than an APSI person? So please, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And Lynne Lipperman from Cuyahoga County.
Hi, everybody. I'm the SSA trainer for Cuyahoga.
Awesome.
Welcome.
And Tiffany, Neill. Oh, did I lose Tiffany? And she's back. She's not. There you are, Tiffany. Can we hear you?
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm not sure what happened. I can hear you. Can you hear me well?
Yep. Perfect. No problem. Thank you so much. And then these five of us will be talking most of the time, but we also did have some valuable input and a ton of help from Holly Fortman, Lucas County Board of DD, who's also joining us during time off work. You're the best, Holly. Thank you. And Maggie from Cuyahoga helped with some of our content, and I told her that we already had too many talkers, so she couldn't come on the panel. So sorry, Maggie, maybe you're in the audience. I hope you're in the audience. Sometime we'll have Maggie host her own training because she's amazing and was very helpful with this. So, all right, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Just a little housekeeping. Again, I am going to be putting in the chat box the PowerPoint in a couple minutes. This is being recorded, and it will be available on Member Connect probably next week one day. For CPDUs, all you had to do was log on, so we are good there. You don't have to do anything else except for stay for the majority of the time. Just to remind everybody, originally this was scheduled till 10:30. When we started going through the content, we realized that it's really hard to get all this in an hour and a half. So we will be going until 11 o'clock today. If you need to get off at 10:30, we completely understand. That was the original intent. But if you can stay on, please stay on, and you'll be able to watch the recording for the last 30 minutes if you had to get off. So thanks again for that, and sorry if there was any confusion. Check Member Connect next week to claim your CPDUs and to get all this great information that you watch the recording, share it out amongst people. I think that's it. Do we need to do any other things? I'm not looking at the chat box, Holly. Since you're there, just let me know if there's anything too technical, but it looks good. All right, we have 299 people on. I love it. We'll get past that 300 so that there's a reason why we can't see your faces. Reminder, we cannot see your faces and we cannot hear you. We can only see the panelists. So you need to put things in the chat box if it's important to us. If it's only important to the hosts and panelists, please only ask the hosts and panelists. If you just want to talk to people, put it in there for everybody. We'd all love to see. Today, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about an old idea, Tuckmans 4 stages. Some of you may have heard of it. I had not. This talks about normal team development, no matter what kind of team you have. And I'm really excited to share it because it's very valuable information for our system. We're going to talk about strategies of working through those tough conversations that we have, both in meetings and one-to-one. We're going to talk about those skills needed to keep the conversations and meetings focused and purposeful. We're going to talk about what happens when things go terrible and we need to mend the relationship, because gosh knows, as SSAs, you guys have some tough conversations, and then the next day you got to answer that phone. So, and you got to go to somebody's house and all that. So we need to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about saying no. How does that go? What's it like to say no? What's the stress level for that? And all the time we're going to be trying to put more real life examples and scenarios in there. So the scenarios we have might go astray, you know, they're there for the point of really brainstorming what we did, what worked for us, but every single situation is different and you can't compare them. You know, there's no recipe. I hate to tell you, this is part 2 of, you know, having good conversations was our part 1, having difficult conversations is part 2. But there's no ABC to this. A lot of it is getting back to the basics and thinking, what can I do? So hang in with us, please, and hopefully you'll find some good information out today. All right, we're going to start with a movie really quick, and this is about the Tuckmans 4 stages. I'm going to have to stop sharing because my computer is not, you know, really helping me much. And you're going to stare at these amazing people for a minute, and now I'm having a hard time even getting out of the screen, so hold on. Here is the first one. Give me a minute. I'm going to get better at this, I promise you guys. All right, so share screen. There we are. It's back up. I'm going to maximize it for you, and oh shoot, I stopped sharing instead of push play. Oh my goodness. This is always an issue. All right, here we go. Play.
Teamwork is essential to meet any goal. And you probably know from your own experience of running a team or belonging to one that teams don't always immediately click. Well, did you know that there are some fairly obvious and standard stages that teams go through, from initially coming together until they reach their full potential? Think back to a time you've run a team or put a team together. Now, let's take a look at this example. Maybe some of it will seem familiar to you. A new team gets together for the first time. Some members are a bit wary. There's some awkwardness, nerves, and a little anxiety. But everyone knows that you're the boss and they all look to you for guidance. After the initial meeting, you might find that some team members start to get a bit edgy. Some start to compete to get their ideas heard. Some show reluctance to accept the way you choose to do things, and conflicts and tensions can arise. It can all be a bit overwhelming. But gradually, the team members start to function better as their roles become more defined and the team mission is established. You find that they are starting to socialize, and this means that they work together better by doing things like giving constructive criticism and helping each other out. Then finally, and maybe after some time, you find that as your team's hard work starts to progress towards the target, you can take a step back, delegate, and allow them to perform under their own steam. That's a typical scenario, and these are the 4 stages you've just witnessed. The first is forming, when the new team look to their leader for guidance. This stage is usually quite short and might only last for the first meeting, as the team are keen to get on with the task at hand. Then there's the uncertain, competitive stage. We call this storming. After storming comes norming, where the team mission is defined and cliques are formed. Finally, there's performing. The team work together to reach their common goal. Forming, storming, norming, and performing. By the way, don't be surprised if sometimes the storming and norming phases overlap as new problems or tasks come up. And there you have it, 4 clear stages that teams go through to get from strangers to a team united in achieving the same goal. As a leader, you can use this tool to make sure you do the right thing at the right stage, and you can use your understanding of these stages to better manage your team and smoothly get them to the performing stage.
All right. Well, let me go back to our PowerPoint now, because that's how we roll. We got to go back and forth between screens so that we can keep moving. So I hope you guys, I never know which one to open. What one did I decide to open? All right. One screen, Lynn? Oh, yay, I did it right. Okay. So Tuckman's 4 stages. Yeah. So I don't know if the rest of you guys have ever thought about it. I certainly hadn't until we all started talking about this, but what I want you to think about is your team meetings, right? What stage are they in? What I realized is that, this has to do with, supervisors looking at their SSAs, supervisors in businesses and how they run there. I mean, this is all teams. This is not about a DD system, but it is completely relevant when I look back on walking into a new team, right? And how you're in that early stages, or when somebody's just getting services and you're in that forming and you're just kind of like just watching and polite. I love in this slide, it shows what you'll see in the team. So under stage 1, they've got polite and confused, and people are watching, watchful and just listening a lot, right? And then in stage 2, in the forming, you've got a little bit, maybe like all of a sudden, wait a minute, what are we doing here, right? Confrontation, conflict, difficulties. I don't know if I want to be in here, right? And then in stage 3, when there's norming and you're all working together better, you have that cohesiveness, established procedures. You're giving and getting feedback. And then obviously in the performing, you're actually all targeted on the same goal and you're getting results. And when I looked at that myself, I said, oh my gosh, when I looked at my caseload with teams, I might have had 4, by the way, out of 35 that were actually performing. The other ones were somewhere at any one time, right? Like you're never going to have 30 teams at performing. Our system doesn't allow it, I don't think. So we need to know how to help our team move from one stage to another. And that's really about facilitating those tough conversations, because a lot of us, I kept thinking, man, it feels like we just keep going back between forming and storming, just like that video said. Right? Like, oh, somebody's new on. We got to go back. We got to be polite. We got to figure out what's going on. Oh, no, they don't agree with us. We got to kick them out. We got to get the new provider. We got to. So anyways, I hope you'll think about this. And there are so many resources online about how to move from one stage to another. So keep that in mind. And this is really, you know, I said, put in the chat box what you guys are thinking. What stage are your teams in mostly? What do you see on a regular basis? Or how many would be in the storming phase? You know, I think that's the one that's really scary to all of us, is how do we get out of storming? And guess what? Storming is normal and storming is good. Whoops, sorry. Whoop, I skipped 2 slides because I did that. All right, so Amanda's going to talk to us a little bit about why those teams are stuck in forming and storming.
Yeah, so I like Lisa said, we've all had those teams. Most of our teams are probably usually stuck in forming or storming. And so looking at why that is and examining that will be the most helpful. So I know we've all walked in on meetings where, you know, everyone is going to be quiet, and maybe they've lost motivation, maybe you're not getting suggestions, or a team might have really intense emotions, and you know, you're trying to facilitate that and work with everyone so everyone feels like they're being heard. So it's really important to examine why people are either in that forming or that storming stage. So like the video talked about, when teams are in forming, they may be unclear about their objective or unsure of one another. You're trying to get to know one another. There may be some confusion. Maybe they're not understanding each other's roles. And actually, maybe they don't understand their own role as a member of the team. People are usually pretty cautious, quiet, polite, like Lisa talked about. And then when we get to the storming, there may be some power struggles or conflicts and difficulties. People usually get really emotionally involved, and some team members might just be worn down, and they might just be exhausted and done. So we have people who become apathetic, whereas we have others who become overpowering and confrontational or even angry. So remember too that teams can fluctuate from the norming back to the storming. And so you kind of are always going through that cycle of, okay, we're performing, we're back to norming, now we're storming. So it's always trying to kind of understand where your teams are. And you as the SSA play such a critical role in the team and bringing them together, or even back together, back to that norming. And it's your role to help facilitate. You know, you play such a big role to help facilitate and move beyond that. And I think at this point too, reminding teams of personal experiences and fears, and the bond of a team and trust is so important to help them move forward for the person that's supported. I think also number one, sorry, Lisa, I was going to say those one-on-one interactions, those one-on-one relationships, really developing that with each member of the team is also so important.
Yeah, Linda was in the chat box saying with the issues of staff changing, it feels like the first 2 steps are so much more than maybe in the past even. And I think that was where I was thinking too.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the next slide where it seems like we always have a newbie on the team. So, and you know, you talked about it, that staff are always changing and you're always kind of forming that team. So starting with that relationship, that one-on-one relationship with the newbie is so important, and trying to develop that level of comfort with each member of the team. So then they feel comfortable, begin maybe to feel comfortable with each other potentially. I know we've talked about how some SSAs maybe bring food to a meeting. Like if they know it's going to be intense, they're like, okay, here's snacks, and food makes everything a little better, right? I've had meetings where you tell a joke to begin with, and it kind of breaks up the tension. You know, of course, you always get to that point of the intense emotions. You know it's coming, but you can at least maybe giggle at first and have a good laugh. So just really trying to encourage people to feel comfortable with you, and then try to develop that team camaraderie. But I do think and we talked about this as we were going over the slides, also developing boundaries is super important. So, you know, you have to lay out those healthy boundaries and kind of know where people are. And that comes with that one-on-one relationship, really understanding where a person's coming from and how they might operate. So we talked about some ways to overcome some of the forming. And one of those things was the donut sort. And I think that was in our first presentation. And so if you've never used the donut sort, it's really helpful to clarify the roles and responsibilities of the different members of the team. And so it lays out really nicely what has to be done in a particular way, or what the person can be creative with. And then what's not their usual responsibility. So there's kind of three ways to sort it out. And it really helps to define those roles and revisit those roles so people understand where each other's coming from. The other thing is looking at the 4+1 questions. So what have we tried? What have we learned? What are you pleased about? What are you concerned about? And then leading to that +1 question, okay, what should we do next? And then this really helps teams feel like each person is contributing, each person is being heard. And especially when you have that dominant voice, you can pull some information from the others who may not be as vocal or as loud. And then a shared vision. And I think, you know, when we talked about, when the team here talked about this, we talked about usually using the visual trajectory. So if you've ever used that, it's very helpful of where you're at, what you don't want to happen, and where you want to go. And so it gives the team a great visual of what's working and what's not working really, and how we can help the person to get there. So these tools can be helpful for the new person on the team if you're forming and you have that newbie, but it's also helpful for existing team members and understanding team dynamics, where the team's been and where they want to go. Also, I think it was always helpful. Sometimes it got frustrating when we had a newbie on the team because you've tried things and it's failed and you've had that experience. And then a newbie comes and they have a different take on things and they suggest something you've already tried, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, we've already tried that. But it was really, I've had too many experiences to count where we tried it again, but we used that different look at it that the newbie gave, and it was successful. And so I always had to kind of hold myself accountable to say, okay, just because we failed before, it's a new day. We're going to try this again. We're going to take a look at it the way, you know, this new team member has suggested.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Amanda. You know, I guess for me, one of the reasons why I love this slide is to think about, it's so easy because we're all so busy. I mean, you guys are handling so many things. You've got like 20 balls in the air going on. And then all of a sudden you've got, you know, a new provider or, you know, a new mental health worker that joins the team or, you know, whoever. And it's so easy to just kind of like, okay, you know, like kind of jump on the train while it's going down the track full speed. Right. And all of a sudden they fall off. Right. And we're like, why'd they fall off? Why didn't they just jump on? You know? So, you know, to me, these are the things to keep them actually on, like slow the train down for a hot minute, develop that relationship, let them know what everybody's doing. And it is exhausting, but to stop and take that break, let them know what we've tried, let them know what we're working towards, you know, because if they don't know where we're going, they're just going to be like, this is way too much. And I am terrible at this, by the way, Amanda. I could use some help slowing down, by the way, right? I like to just jump on. So keep this slide. If the team's got new people, if the team's exhausted and tired and seems to be disjointed, you know, think about all these things.
I really like the idea too of having the visual assistance of things, because I know there were times I walk into a meeting and everyone just stares at you. You're the SSA, right? And so you have the answers, you know what to do, and you're a leader. Like, here, work, right? And when you put up these visuals, maybe the 4+1 questions, maybe you put a question on a big piece of paper. So you have 4 different pieces of paper, and everyone comes in and they write what they want on each of those.
What worked, what didn't work, and
Yep. And it takes some of that pressure off of you, where you're creating that teamwork.
Yeah, true facilitation versus, being
Right.
in charge, right? And those resources are at the back of our training. We are listing resources to those 2 sorts. And then a shared vision is something that we can all talk about. That having the team have a shared vision is you can just look up, right? All kinds of things. And basically that's like, what are the outcomes we're working towards? What do we really want for this person, whether it's this year or next year? So all right, we will keep moving. Thank you so much, Amanda. And so that was more about kind of that forming and storming, but now we've got, that was like a lot about the forming, right? And then we kind of move into the storming. And I love to think about, why do interactions and conversations go offline, right? Like and I call offline because it's a Sarah Buffy term. And we're going to watch a quick video about Sarah Buffy, but I want you to think about that during storming in our team meetings, right? What is going on? And so I have to stop sharing. I'm going to try to be quicker about it this time. And we're going to watch Sarah's video that I know a lot of you have seen this, but I can tell you I've seen it 50 times and I learn something new every single time. So please bear with me and, okay, here I go again. I can't, I don't know why. Oh, there it is. My screen. Let's get it going. Oh, nope. Sorry. I'm really trying to I just ended my show. Okay. We'll get back to that. All right, here we go. Next time I'm going to be better. I'm going to have one of you guys talking. All right, where's my Zoom people? Here we go. We're going to all watch Sarah Buffy talk while you guys took a deep breath. And we're going to maximize it. And here we go.
I'm going to show you a quick Handbrain, and this is the work of Dan Siegel. You can Google him online. You can also Google hundreds of Handbrain videos out there. This is one I'll share with you now. So if your hand was a brain, the first thing to grow in utero is your spinal column. This is in charge of sending all the messages that we receive down to every other part of our body and then back again. So if you stub your toe, there's a message sent to your brain that, that hurt. And the same thing, vice versa. This is the information superhighway between your brain and the rest of your body. The next thing to grow is your brainstem. And this is in charge of everything we don't think about. So breathing, digestion, going to the bathroom. If you're nodding at the computer screen right now saying, oh, interesting, that is a brainstem function. This is in charge of everything we don't consciously think about. It keeps us alive. It's a very helpful part of our brain and one of the oldest parts of our brain. The next thing to grow is our fear center. This is our survival center. So this is a really key part of our brain that has to do with all the functions that, again, really are keeping us alive. What you need from 0 to 18 months for your thinking brain to grow online in a way that's helpful to you is first a felt sense of safety. If you have a felt sense of safety, your brain will grow the attachment neurons. These are the parts of your brain that help you to attach to safe other human beings. Also the part of your brain that helps you work cooperatively with others. If you have attachment, you can grow the regulation parts of your brain. This is the part of your brain that helps you regulate your mood. So really high highs, you can come back down. If you're having a hard time, feeling lethargic, you can bring your mood back up. This is all happening through the regulation centers here in your brain. If you have felt safety, attachment, and regulation from 0 to 18 months, your thinking brain will start to grow online in a way that's really helpful for you. Now, this is the part of the brain that has to do with logic, consequences, reasoning, and control. It's also the part of the brain that houses language, and specifically language that helps you ask and answer questions. Okay, so let's go back to the fear center here. If you don't have felt safety, right? If you're experiencing a lot of difficulties early on in childhood and you don't feel safe in your body, your brain will not grow the attachment neurons. It doesn't want you to attach to unsafe people. If you don't grow those, you can't grow the regulation parts of your brain to regulate your mood. So if you yourself, or you're working with someone who goes from 0 to 60 for what looks like no reason, that tells us that they didn't have regulation growing up. And regulation is a learned trait. We don't just randomly know how to soothe ourselves. That's a message that we're given or not given early on in childhood. So if you don't have felt safety, attachment, and regulation, what happens is that shows us that you've experienced a lot of stress throughout your life, especially in childhood. What I'm doing right now is trying to emphasize that when we have stress hormones running through our body, when we have a lot of fear or kind of disorganization in our life, cortisol is a chemical that's running through our system. Cortisol and adrenaline are very helpful if we need to outrun a tiger or fight something off. But what happens is if we have a lot of stress early on, right? If that cortisol, if that bear is coming into our home every single night, our fear center is on high alert because we don't need our thinking brain to outrun a tiger or to fight off a perpetrator. We need to react. We need to be in fight or flight. This is where that fight or flight mechanism is really housed. What happens is most of us, anyone, when we walk into a situation, our brain scans for safety or danger. And if our fear center says, hey, we're safe, it sends a message to our thinking brain to come online and we can go about our day. But if anything in our environment is a trigger, so sight or smell or sound, or if something reminds us of something from our past, our thinking brain will be offline and will be in that stress fight or flight mode until we get messages that we can bring our thinking brain back online. When we're working with people or trying to understand ourselves, the one thing I want to offer is you have to connect before you correct. If we see someone in a triggered space and we tell them to calm down, relax, calm down, no, don't stop. Those are all trigger words that throw the thinking brain right offline. So when we see someone offline, what we need to do is say, how can I help you feel safe? We need to acknowledge that they're in a fear space before we start to come at them with any logic or consequences in that specific situation. There's a lot more to learn about the Handbrain, but hopefully this gives us a foundation to understand when someone's offline, we have the power to be safe people in people's lives, to help them feel seen and heard so that their thinking brain can come back online, and then we can work through this situation together. Again, check out Dan Siegel's Handbrain or just Google Handbrain or Handbrain for Kids. You can find larger explanations, but this will hopefully get us on the right path.
All right. Okay, somebody else talk about the Handbrain for a hot minute while I'm stopping sharing and resharing for the second of many, many times, right? Oh, there we go. All right, I think we're good, right? Are we back already? No, we're not.
We're in presentation mode, I think, Lisa.
Oh, that's all right. I can swap displays on that. That's an easy one. All right, is that better?
Yep, now we're good.
Oh, yay. Well, I am telling you, one thing I meant to tell you before, and I tried to write it in the chat, but I was distracted and I didn't write it well. When I'm watching this about difficult conversations and interactions going offline, I want you to think about the Handbrain with those people that you're interacting with. It's not just about the client, right? It's not even just about you. It is about you, first of all. A lot of you said the hardest thing is to handle stress under pressure. Guess what's happening right there? You personally are going offline, right? So how do you handle stress under pressure? We have to figure out how to get our thinking brain on. How do we feel safe? How can we do that? But also the other people on the team, right? This is about anybody you interact with. There's nothing specific about the Handbrain and disabilities. So I'm going to tell you a story later on about where I've used this in a team meeting on a regular basis, because we did have a lot of emotionality, a lot of people offline. But I want to, when you watch the Handbrain again, don't just think about people that we serve, who've had, who have had traumatic and abusive, that, yes, that is important. It's more important than anybody that we do it there. But think about just your coworker, your supervisor, the provider you're working with, the guardian that you're working with, all those people. Assume that people feel unsafe for some reason when they're emotional, right? When they're offline. So how can we use those same principles to help them get their thinking brain on? Because I can tell you not much happens on a team meeting if people don't have their thinking brain on, right? So that's really where we want to learn more about it and talk about that. Okay, so we are going to transition now more a little bit about this complex teams, right? Now that we have a little bit of information about the fact that people go offline, we've got some information that we're working in that kind of storming and norming area. And we want to say, like, how do we work with complex teams? I love this idea of effective meetings don't happen by accident. They happen by design. So that means that we don't just walk into a team meeting, without a plan, right? We don't just say, well, just please, gosh, let it go better than it did last time. That's not preparation. Putting some thought, coming in proactively, knowing that, okay, we got some, this is going to be a tough one. What can I do to make people feel safe? What can I do so that people are able to have good, honest, transparent conversation, all those things that you guys talked about. So, good stuff to know. All right. I don't know. I don't have this. I guess am I on this one?
Nope, that's just me.
I don't know
Good
why I
morning
don't
again,
know.
folks.
I
So
don't
we're going to review guiding your team through a rough patch. So essentially, every team has had to weather a rough patch at some point. And while SSAs make difficult or uncomfortable suggestions to move the team forward, we also need to pay close attention to the team's morale. It's your job as an SSA to help lift their spirits and get the teams back on track. We do recognize, of course, that this is no easy task, and it can be difficult to see the positive, especially when things are falling apart. But again, every team goes through rough patches and growing pains. And during those times that a team most needs during these times, it's when we need those strong SSAs to help them weather the storm. So certainly we want to, during times of crisis, communicate, whether that's good or bad. This plays a huge role in how the team reacts and moves forward. So your instinct might be to, shield the guardian or the individual or the providers, or to essentially dance around the situation at hand, but that can in turn be harmful and delay the team in moving forward. So it's critical to be open, honest, and transparent as you can be. It's pretty much the classic, if team members see you panicking, then they'll think it's time to panic. Or if they see you showing strength, then they'll feel confident in your ability to guide the team. You want your team members to trust in your leadership. So next, it's critical to learn from your mistakes, just as kiddos or as our parents always had said, this aids us in handling similar situations better in the future. So in the process of when we analyze and evaluate our mistakes, it's important not to place blame on others and create animosity among those team members. You should be open to thoughts and solutions from those team members as well. And then, as I think Amanda had touched on, the vision, we want to bring clear and communicative, want to be clear and communicative about what the end goal is, and reminding everyone we're all working to accomplish the same goal, regardless of the differences we may have. So there's a chance you may need to remind team members of this more than once to get them to truly hear and remember this. And then I think we talked about celebrating large and small wins during the first session, but this is so true. When your team is going through a rough and difficult time, it can be easy to dwell on things that are going wrong, or essentially vent and getting caught up in things that are consistently being done or said, but bottom line, that does not move the team forward. So essentially, those types of situations will result in you being burnout or exhausted, again, similar to what Amanda had stated. And then again, we lose sight of the goal and what we're really trying to do work-wise. So it's important to remember to, again, celebrate large and small wins to keep the team motivated, which then reminds them that their work does bring value. Additionally, we want to ask for honest feedback. It can be tempting for SSAs to want to fix everything and essentially bear the burden that when things aren't going as expected. However, trying to solve problems on your own can be damaging at times, and the rough patch may become bigger than you're even capable of solving. So when you're in a rough patch, ask for honest feedback and be prepared for tough feedback, even when you might not want to hear it. Listening to different perspectives allows us to look at the problem holistically and can result in a stronger team dynamic. Two, we want to avoid asking vague conversations. We really do want to get to the root of the issue by asking engaging conversations. So you may say things such as, how is this affecting you and the team? Or what challenges do you think we would what changes do you think would offer the most benefit? And what can I do to better support you and the team? Thank you. We can move slides.
Right. Perfect. All right.
So we've all been in meetings that have been less than productive, to say the least. We have sat in meetings in which individuals maybe have completely checked out and are no longer an active participant in the meeting. We have sat in meetings where the tone has become very tense, and which differences of opinions have led to conflicts and lack of productivity. And so there are times when you're in a meeting that it's time to take a break. There are a variety of reasons that we should be stepping back and taking a break. Part of it is it allows teams and the individuals to decompress and come back and regroup, come back completely refreshed and renewed. It allows teams to think about the issues at hand and maybe bring new solutions to the table where the team is currently stuck. It allows for everyone to consult with outside resources, with their supervisors. And it also allows for some of the side conversations to happen. We talked earlier about developing those one-on-one relationships, help bring team productivity to its head. This is a great time when you have an unproductive team meeting and an unproductive team to have those side conversations. Putting a pin in the meeting and regrouping and coming back to the discussion allows for that refocus on the common goal.
Thanks, Kristina.
So when might the team need a break? Some things to be looking out for when you're in these team meetings, signs that it is time to stop and reset. When the team is feeling stressed, maybe they're overwhelmed, the entire team is just completely frazzled. When the team is all talking over each other, when you can't hear other people's opinions and other people's input because someone else is talking over them, thinking that they're right, you've lost the rails. When people have completely checked out, Mandy brought up earlier about, the quiet team a little bit. This is exactly that situation. When the individual serves, when we have the individual themselves who we are all meeting to discuss is no longer an active participant in their team meeting. Maybe they're tired, maybe they're hungry, maybe they're just done. And it's important that the individual themselves is there to be part of that discussion about their services, about their life. And so maybe the team itself is operating fine, but the individual needs the break. Then it's time to reset. When the team is needing outside resources, especially when the team meetings have gone on longer than was scheduled. If you're walking in thinking that the meeting is going to be an hour and you're now venturing into the hour and a half and it's still not done, it's time to reschedule and continue this discussion for a later date. When the conversation just keeps recycling itself, and when you start reacting versus responding to situations. And what I mean by this is it goes hand in hand back to the Handbrain conversation. You're having to calm yourself, but you have to connect first. So if you are at the point where you are responding and you're not actually thinking through the responses that you should be having, then it's time to reset.
Awesome. I love that. Making emergencies when there are none, right? That's my life. I was on a meeting yesterday, Kristina, and I was like, I felt so passionate about my topic, and the people that were answering my questions were not answering my questions. And I literally thought to myself, why am I making such a big deal out of this to myself all of a sudden? And it was because I had lost it, right? I had gone offline. I was like, all right, I need to just step back. Thank you for listening to me. I woke up this morning, still a little upset about it, but much better now. So, all right. Tiffany's going to talk to us about how to help others. I love this. We already said we're really good. We're empathetic.
I know that. Please.
How do we help? How do we help
That's
others
awesome.
do that?
Wonderful. Well, seeing that it's still here in the slides, we'll go ahead and touch on it. But again, truly, that was, heartwarming to see that so many of you had saw that in yourself or think of yourself as such. So nonetheless, I'm sure that most of you know, empathy is one of the most important social skills that we can have. We need to understand and show concern for others, as this helps build bridges or resolve conflicts, and certainly deepens our interpersonal relationships with others. There may be times when you're called upon to teach empathy to others when situations get challenging, or essentially a team member goes awry, or the entire team goes awry. If this happens, start by role playing, using active listening skills with them and showing them how to better tune into others around them. So if a person does rush to respond or share their own opinions, they stand in the way of empathy. You want to turn to face the speaker and be sure to make eye contact. You should be trying your best to understand what the person is saying, not simply listening to reply. I'm sure all of us have not felt that we've been heard, essentially when something's just being spit back at you. So that is definitely important. Another important piece is paraphrasing. So those learning empathy need feedback to determine if they understand the message that they're receiving during communication. Saying what the person said back to you in a different way helps you double check that you got the message right. This will then allow the speaker to relay it again, should you understand in the event the message was not received correctly. So, and empathy essentially is the classic stepping into other people's shoes. So we need to help others learn empathy by breaking down different scenarios or situations, and then asking them to reflect on experiences of the people involved by asking them how they feel the other person might be feeling, or even what they might be thinking. So additionally, we want to make connections. When we get really caught up in our own worlds, our capacity for empathy can be limited at those times. When you expand your focus to the world at large, including strangers, so that might be the new team members from the forming, or even new DSP members during a home visit, we become more capable of feeling deeply for others. So additionally, this is kind of a caveat to what Kristina had said. We want to ask team members about non-work related matters, whether that's before a meeting or after a meeting, or when the time is right, maybe if you're at a home visit. This certainly helps build relationships. We often are in a hurry, though, to get to our next meeting or to our next home visit, or perhaps to go off the clock. But taking a few minutes to ask someone how they are doing with intention aids in making those connections. So additionally, differences do separate people. However, while similarities bring people together. So we want to talk about the different people in their lives, from everyone's kids, teachers, to maybe even the mailman that you might be sharing, or another team member that you might know from another team, etc. As you practice connecting more through broader conversations, you can eventually move towards smaller, more personal conversations. And then we want to be sure to give people our full attention. And this is something I'm definitely working on, especially when folks come to my office. But distractions are one of the most common obstacles to effective empathy. So we need to remove them whenever it is possible, whether that's silencing your phone or stop viewing your email, so you can truly engage with the person. And distractions just aren't simply cell phones or computers. This can be a distraction mentally or physically, whether you're bringing, some personal issues into your work, or even if you're hungry. So bottom line, you need to attend to your needs before you start having a conversation, so you can be fully present with others during that conversation. Also, being vulnerable. So sharing your emotions allows us to connect with others. When you're talking to others, make an effort to use feeling words. I know this might be difficult for some and a little too touchy-feely, but this will help them clue into your emotional state. And if they do that in a reciprocal way, we can understand them better. So additionally, or lastly, I guess I should say, if someone around you is in need of empathy, use open body language. We want to foster a healthy connection. We want to make occasional eye contact and soften our voice.
Awesome. Tiffany, what I love about this slide, and Tiffany, there's some comments in the chat about how they love your slide too, Tiffany.
Oh.
But besides the word cloud, which is amazing, by the way, I love that you titled it "How to Help Others Be Empathetic." Like when we did the poll at the beginning, we talked about what's your best skill. And so many of you said my best skill is empathy. But what we're talking about here is not only about how you can be empathetic, but how you can help others be empathetic, because that's really the key to those difficult conversations, right? If they understand where you're coming from and how it might be for you, you're going to have a much better way of doing it. And I love that. Being a role model is probably the number one thing. There's a whole thing you can look up if you want to get really into the brain science of it, that Sarah Buffy and Mary Vicario talk about, with mirror neurons. When you're with people who are online and calm, the people around you become more close to being online and calm. There's an actual distance, like, I don't know, it's like 70 feet or something. It's ridiculous. Like, there is a literal, actually scientific base to the fact that when you show empathy, other people start calming. So I love that. I love it so much. And we are putting I want to tell you, but while we're saying, you can actually go onto Google and type empathy word cloud and go to images, and you don't even have to make your own, by the way. You can just look. There'll be like 10 of them come up and you decide the one that looks the best, by the way. So very cool. You can also make your own. All right. Well, again, I just want to say, we're going to move more into these one-to-one conversations and some of our scenarios soon, and how you deal with it right in the moment. And sometimes that's in a team meeting, but lots of times it's one-to-one. It's in between the meetings. It is on the phone and things like that. I want you to remember, that in the last time we did talk a lot about, one-on-one conversations and relationship building is the key to having less difficult conversations. If you have a trusting, safe relationship with team members at the one-to-one level, the team meetings are going to go way better, right? And when you have to deliver bad news, it's going to go better. So look back at our training from part 1 for a lot of that information also. All right. We're going to move to Lynne is going to start sharing.
Okay, everybody, we're going to talk a little bit about situations on the telephone. I remember vividly the first phone call I got as an SSA that was someone screaming at me on the other end of the phone. And it was 2 weeks after I started. So it can be really traumatic to be on the other end of those kind of phone calls. And we're gonna talk about some of the things to do to kind of work through that. So let's say you get a phone call from someone who's very upset on the other end. They either might be yelling or crying uncontrollably. Maybe they're swearing, maybe they're calling names, ranting without pause. They're very upset or angry about something. Maybe they didn't feel like you followed through with something that you were supposed to do, or maybe they're not happy with their provider who didn't show up to take them to the store, and now they don't know what to do.
Lynn,
Those
did my
interactions.
client call you, Lynn? Did they
What?
call you? Did my client call you?
No, I know. We've all had them and they all go so similarly. But these interactions often include like a rehashing of things, situations that have previously been worked out, or things that were solved, things that were problematic, history that was traumatic for people. And it often is just one of those snowball effect kind of situations. Now is not the time to problem solve when they're in a heightened state. That comes at the end of the call or at another time, and you need to help them calm down first. So you can go to the next slide. We're going to talk first about this USA method. And this is taken from a YouTube video, How to De-escalate Calls with Angry Customers, by someone named Myra Golden. She's actually in the customer service business, but it really applies to our business of people as well. So the first strategy is understanding, and you're starting with an understanding statement. There should be no refusals or defensive responses or any kind of a counterattack. This is an understanding statement that develops empathy. We just spent a lot of time talking about empathy. People are frustrated and upset when they're angry. They need to be acknowledged. And this is where you acknowledge them and validate their feelings. The second strategy is explaining the situation. This is where you give them some hope and talk about what might be a solution. So for example, you could say, I'm the person to talk to individuals when things go wrong. I answer questions and try to help you find solution to problems, at least so they know that you're not going to just blow them off. A is action. Describe what action will be taken. So if I can't help you, I will put you in touch with someone who can. Be strategic about showing your empathy. Be genuine. Explain your role clearly. Give choices of what comes next. Now, I always found this beneficial as an SSA, but also when I was a supervisor and would get phone calls from angry people or parents, I would find myself automatically wanting to go to the defensive, thinking, these are my staff, these are the people that I supervise. Just stay calm, keep your emotions in check, and listen to what the person is saying. Okay, next slide. Here are some other techniques to use on the telephone. And this is from a video called Telephone Techniques by EJ4. So you want to let people talk. Don't interrupt them, just listen closely. Oftentimes that is just what people need. They just need to be heard. Offer a sincere apology. And this is hard if you don't feel that you have anything to apologize for. If this wasn't you, you're still part of the whole picture. I'm so sorry this happened. Even if I'm not responsible for this situation, I work here, I'm involved, and if something is wrong, I have the responsibility to help. Let's figure out how to get this on the right track. Show genuine compassion. This isn't something that can be taught, but just by nodding and smiling and listening, this will go a long way. Know your agency policies and departments. You may need to problem solve at some point with somebody else in your agency. Know who you might need to call in. Again, the video was Telephone Techniques and the person was EJ4. That was just answering a question there. Not last, keep interactions professional. Don't talk disparagingly about other people. Like, yeah, I know they don't know what they're doing. I'm sorry that happened. They're just dumb. You know, don't keep that out of the conversation.
I think
At
she's
the-
talking about me. I think I say that a lot.
No,
That's just dumb. I say that's just dumb.
don't listen to Lisa. She doesn't know. Yeah, keep that out of there. At the end of the call, ask the person if there's been a resolution. Do they feel a little better? It's necessary, again, to keep your emotions in check. When you remain calm, you don't trigger your own escalated response, which it makes you much more capable of being helpful. Know when it is the time to problem solve. When somebody is in a heightened state, it is not the time. But as they start to calm down, that's when you might be able to throw in some solutions. So let's go to the next slide and let's talk about the elephant in the room when a call goes really badly. We've all been on phone calls that have gone really badly, and it is exhibited by continued yelling, swearing, somebody not having any ability to calm down. It's been several minutes. There's threatening behavior toward you. You've tried all these techniques and the other person is not de-escalating. They're in fact escalating. It is okay to end that call. It's perfectly fine to end it if all your efforts are unsuccessful at helping them calm down. And this is something you can say, I can see you're really still upset. I'm going to end this call right now and I will call you back tomorrow so we can discuss this more calmly. Or I'm going to call you back in 2 hours or whatever. Goodbye. And then it's okay to hang up. If you feel that the individual served is in danger, please follow your agency protocols on ensuring safety and MUI reporting, whatever that is. If you personally feel threatened during an interaction or you get threatened, you need to notify your supervisor and talk over things and decide on next steps, again, according to what your agency protocols are. And again, like not the thing to do if this has just been going on a couple minutes. Sometimes it takes people several minutes to calm down, but if things keep escalating and getting worse and you're not able to calm them down, that's when it's time to end a call.
Thanks. I was just looking at the chat box. It talks about, wouldn't it be better to ask them to call back once they've calmed down? I think it depends on the person, right? And what the concerns are.
I mean, you could say that. I think in a way though, it gives you a little bit more control to not be again in that situation. So by saying like, okay, I'm going to call you back tomorrow, it's a clear, this is when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and for those repeat offenders who are very emotional and are calling on a regular basis, I don't particularly like to tell them to call me back when they're calm, because if that's the last thing they heard and they were very offline, they're going to think they're calm in 5 minutes and they're going to start calling again. So I like the idea of the last thing I say is that, I'll call you in a couple hours and see how things are going and see if you're ready to talk again, if we can. All right, well, we're going to have Kristina, I believe, talk a little bit about a scenario that she's worked on with APSI.
Yeah.
APSI never gets crazy calls, do they, Kristina?
Never. I wish I could say that never happened. So the scenario is you have a client who has reported allegations of abuse to their team. This client has a provider and neutral guardian, and the county board is their primary support service providers. You received a call from from the individual's mother, who is extremely upset at the team for failing to keep their loved one safe and is threatening to see everyone in court. I think I have had dozens of these situations. And I'm sure you all have seen various situations like this, whether it's seeing everyone in court or taking it to the media. Those are all statements we have all heard. in these situations, in this specific situation that I'm referencing, the mother is an inactive participant in the individual's life. So as an SSA, one of the things that you should be thinking about is what information can I actually share? First off, and you should be working through some of the techniques that Lynn and everybody has actually talked about. I actually think the Handbrain is probably the best strategy in this type of a situation. Connecting with the mom, you know, reflect, honor, connect, getting her to calm down as best you can. If you're unable to get her to calm, I think this is the perfect situation where you disengage from the call. But I would suggest you do it real strategically. I would suggest that you ask for time to gather more information on the situation, and you call them back and follow up with them with what you have gathered. This actually gives you time to talk with the entire team, the individual, the guardian, any investigative agents involved, your supervisor perhaps, to figure out the best strategy forward on handling this upset family member. And then you can re-engage. It may also be decided that during the discussion with the team that maybe you aren't the best party to be returning that person's call. Maybe it's the guardian that needs to be calling the mother and not you. But that allows you the ability to step back and use your resources effectively and re-engage. And hopefully when you re-engage, the family member is calmer.
Yeah, I love some of your guys' comments in the chat box. And again, if it's a question, I would throw it into the Q&A. It just makes it a little easier for us. But I think I do see a couple statements about, do you really think that that's okay to kind of stop that conversation after letting the person know, after trying to de-escalate, after trying to listen and be empathetic? And I'm going to say, yeah, you know,
Yes.
I mean, we are not, number one, we are not 911. Like I have not been trained to address people's significant, you know, and I don't have emergency services ready to go. Like I think it's super important that you do call the person back though. If you say you're going to call them back, when you say you're going to call them back,
Absolutely.
that you know, if the call goes badly, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, you got to keep engaging people. You can't just ignore it then, which is what I sometimes wanted to do. So, you know, again, always talk to your supervisor, and maybe somebody else is a better person. But you need to think about your own mental health as an SSA. We don't know, when we're talking to you all, what your background is, what your, you know, and if this is going to cause trauma to you, to be, you know, verbally abused, or, you know, you're going to go offline and say something that puts you into a situation where now you are inappropriate, I'd much rather you say, I'm sorry, it sounds like this is not a good time to talk. I really care about what's happening. I'm going to follow up and I'll call you in a few hours, right? Like you just, you know, that's just kind of the status. So we have to keep moving.
And to also keep in mind that just because you're ending the call does not mean you're ending the work or the interaction with people. You're just kind of breaking that cycle of interaction right that minute. Somebody who is difficult, I saw another question, every time, and who is this, Lisa, this isn't the one, it's the de-escalation.
I know, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Give me a minute. You keep talking. You're doing great.
Sure. You know, when you have somebody who's traditionally kind of a bully, that requires a little bit more of a longer term kind of interaction and setting ground rules, whether it be with that person or with the group. You know, I would involve the team to help you. Again, I love that Kristina said, maybe it's not you who should be calling someone. Maybe it should be someone else on the team. Maybe it needs to be your supervisor. Maybe it needs to be your manager who is going to call somebody. At the end of the day, it isn't okay to have somebody bully the team members to get what they want. If it's the individual, then there's other nuances that should be involved, other team members that can help with those interactions. But if it is not the individual, no matter if it's a guardian or someone else, it still is not okay. We're going to watch another video here on de-escalation. This kind of deals more with in-person de-escalation, but I love the 3 strategies: low and slow, name it to tame it, and regulate over educate.
All right.
Hi there. This brief video is going to describe simple calming and de-escalation strategies. When people are escalated, it often comes from a sense of threat or fear. Even if the threat is not real at the time, their past experiences with people in the world may have wired their brains to expect harm or danger. When we as humans perceive threat or are otherwise incredibly stressed or angry or scared, we activate our survival brain. This more primitive part of our brain has only one job: to keep us safe. It doesn't care about reason or logic. In fact, the thinking parts of our brain turn off and we act mostly on instincts. These instincts include reading nonverbal cues from our environment. Those nonverbal cues are actually more important than verbal cues or what people say to us. So when people are escalated, at their core, they want control. We give them control over their own safety and decisions. Do not block people, corner them, or block entrances or possible escape routes. As soon as you do, they want to fight or flee even more. Give 2 arms length distance. Keep our body posture open so it does not appear that you are hiding anything. Keep your body posture as relaxed as you can, even if it's hard. A looming, towering figure only sends the message that you want to dominate. So if it feels okay to do so, ask them what would make them feel safe or feel better. Put the control back on their turf. Ask what would help. Ask what could happen next. One of the most famous practices and sayings for de-escalation is low and slow, from Teresa Bolick. Low and slow refers to both your body movements and your voice or speech. Just like it sounds, we want to keep the tone of our voice low and the speed of our voice slow. When you lower your tone and speed, it makes it more possible for the other person to process what you are saying and not feel threatened, as opposed to a higher pitched tone and quick speech, which frankly increases stress. Then we also try to lower and slow down our body movements and posture. So try to sit in a chair or on the floor, especially if you were children, and especially if the person who is escalated is lower down than you. Maybe they're on the floor or in a chair. If you get on an even playing field, this gives the nonverbal cue that you mean no threat. And try to slow down your body movements so as to not further alarm their cues for danger. Move slowly, walk slowly, keep your hands out and open where they can see them. Next, use the tip, name it to tame it, made popular by Dan Siegel. By naming emotions, we gain control over them. Therapists have known this forever. Acknowledge that they may be feeling anxious, angry, especially if it's a child. Stay with that feeling, validate it. Let them know the feeling is okay as long as they stay safe. We also like to say, regulate over educate. When people are in distress, it's not the time to teach or educate or think back about what they could have done differently. The only goal is to regulate their emotions. Usually this is done by giving space and time, staying calm, and helping provide a calming atmosphere. It takes the body 20 to 30 minutes to come back down to baseline after a perceived or an actual threat. Just think of your own situations when something really scared you or startled you. Even if you look like you're getting back to normal, your body is still pumping all those stress hormones for a while. So wait it out. Just help people regulate. If the person was aggressive or destructive, especially if it's a child, there does, of course, need to be a consequence. But wait on talking about the consequence. Finally, two of the most important things you can do all along the way, and that's before people get too distressed, or even while they're distressed, is to validate their feelings and be empathic. I see you are struggling. I see this is hard. If it's okay, I'll stay here with you until you feel better.
I'm Dr. Carter.
Right.
I think that's such a powerful video. I learned so much when I saw that, and I was like, "Ooh, I wished I had seen that before I started parenting."
That's for sure. All right. Let's see if I can get back to our slides easier this time. And now it's just a white blank screen. There we go. That's the video we just saw.
Okay, so there's so many good concepts in that video. And I guess it really does boil down to those three: low and slow, name it to tame it, regulate over educate. And keeping in mind that you can use these in person and on the phone as well, or over Zoom. Again, asking them what would make them feel better, what could help, what could happen next. I see this is hard for you. Good grief, that's such an easy thing to say and so powerful, so impactful. And then keeping in mind that it generally takes the body 20 to 30 minutes to come down for fight or flight. We often don't give ourselves enough time. Make sure we're giving other people that time.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I mean, this is to me, and I love, that video talks about Dan Siegel, and Sarah Buffy talks about Dan Siegel all the time, right? And I know we've got some Sarah Buffy lovers on here, and she's big in our field. I mean, this is not, again, I'm just going to reiterate it. This is not about people with disabilities or people that have been through trauma. This is like the universal precautions of dealing with people, period. Right? It can be your husband, it can be your kid, it can be anybody. When somebody is offline, we got to be low and slow. We got to name it to tame it. We got to regulate over educate. Our next slide is about reflect, honor, connect, which guess what? It's pretty much the same, right? Lynn and I were fighting, like, which one do we like better? Low and slow, name it, tame it, regulate, educate. I'm like, I like reflect, honor, connect. It doesn't matter. What we want you guys, it's the same ideas that we're talking about. So you got to figure out what works for you. What do you remember? What helps you think when you're in a stressful situation? How do you handle that pressure, right? How do you help the people around you handle the pressure? So we're going to talk about a quick scenario again, Gladys. And Gladys is a guardian, right? And some of you may have heard about Gladys in a previous training from a couple years ago, because she's pretty famous. And Holly knows Gladys well. Well, she actually doesn't know Gladys well. By the time Holly got involved, Gladys was gone. But Gladys is Gladys the guardian, right? And she's the guardian of her older sister. They're in their 60s and 70s. And she shows up at her sister's ISPs, and she is just she's a bully. I mean, whoever wrote that in the chat box, like, what do you do about bullies? Let me tell you, she was a bully. And I love this woman, by the way. And she's okay with me talking about this, right? And her name's not Gladys, so we don't have to worry about that. But the point being is that, she would come in and she was like, okay, this is all the things that have gone wrong. And this is what I have all the answers. This is what you need to do. Don't allow the person to do this. Don't allow B to go out. She creates drama no matter where she goes. So no social activities. I don't want her to get diabetes. So she's got borderline. That's it. No sugar for the rest of her life. Right. And I'm like, and then SSA is like, no, what are we going to do? She's the guardian, by the way. Right. What do you do? Right. So most of the meetings end with, B crying, that, the 70-year-old, and Gladys screaming, and, no, we didn't think about what Kristina talked about to just stop the meeting before all that happened. Right. It was gone. It's gone. So again, how did we use low and slow, name it and tame it, regulate over educate? Well, we did some things in team meetings, right? First of all, but most importantly, it was in between the team meetings. It was getting to know Gladys on a one-to-one relationship. It's some of those things that we talked about, finding commonalities. As an SSA, I met up with Gladys, and I really was low and slow, right? I was like, what's going on? What's going on in your life in general? Nothing to do with B. Let's just get to know what's going on. I found out so much information. What's the history going on? What's been your relationship with B over the past 70 years, by the way, because I certainly don't know. And realizing that I really need to say, like, wow, you are really dedicated to your sister and committed. And I'm like, I'm in awe of the fact that you are in your 60s and you're the guardian for and the payee and the everything. I mean, it's all that all B wants is Gladys's approval. And so the emotionality on both of theirs, and there was very little educating going on in the first couple of meetings in between, right? I didn't need to tell her what the rules were for the, not until I heard her out and she knew that I really, really understood where she was coming from, could I even begin to explain and educate on what where we're going with this stuff. So what did I learn when I did do low and slow, right? And learn and connect and build that relationship? What did I learn about Gladys, the guardian, right? I learned that both Gladys and B had a very abusive childhood, and that Gladys, this was like 2 or 3 times where all I did was just go with Gladys to do something. Maybe I was there while she was working on some paperwork for B. We went to go look at different housing situations, right? And we're talking to her about, we're still there for B, but I'm really getting to know Gladys at this point. I found out that mother passed away 10 years ago, and her dying wishes was that Gladys would always care for B. She would always let her live with her, and she would be responsible for her. I realized that when I brought up ideas, Gladys, about B going and doing things, that Gladys thought that if B caused any drama, provider would give notice and say, that's it, no more. And it would be her responsibility as the guardian to do those things. If we write in there that she needs to go shopping and pick out her own clothes and go to a dance and join a club, then it was going to be Gladys's responsibility to do that. And I had to let her know, like, oh, no. You're her guardian. You are not her all be all, right? Like, your responsibility is to help make good decisions, for her, but not to actually do all that. We can't make you do that. They've been fighting since the day mom passed. Those 2 women, wonderful women in both their own ways, had been fighting every day. B, who I thought was the absolute most adorable woman in the entire world, and she still is, by the way, and she's kicking it and doing great right now. She would leave at least 10 voicemails a day for Gladys, cussing her out, doing everything that we just talked about on that telephone scenario. And let me tell you, Gladys was her sister, and she did not have the skills to practice any of those things we just did. She reacted, and then it was like this, and it was like this, and it was like this. And pretty soon, if they could have, they would have went through it was bad, right? So she stopped answering, which of course you can't, as a guardian, you can't never answer the phone call, right? You can't never talk to the person, but that's where they were at. The hardship, what does it say? Huge hardship still doesn't deter Gladys from being there for B. So even though all this is going on, she continues to be her payee. She continues to be her guardian. She continues to try to figure out a way to do this. So I found out a lot, and that was all before I started even trying to educate her about any of that stuff. We'll pick up a little bit later again about her. I don't know. Am I talking about her again? I think I am. So yeah. So I think time-wise, I don't know if many of you have seen the Reflect, Honor, Connect. I love this. It's very similar to the ideas that we just talked about. So I don't know, panelists, should we show it or should we? Okay, we're going to leave it in here for you guys as a resource, but we're going to go ahead and talk about another scenario where I really used the words reflect, honor, and connect more, and the Handbrain. So, all right, we've got Alan here. So here's Alan. He is in a team meeting, and Amanda and I always talk about this guy, good old Alan, and that's not really Alan, by the way, but he's 25. He has a short fuse. How many of you guys have a client with a short fuse that causes a ruckus on the team, right? And the whole team just kind of tiptoes around him, right? Because at any minute he's going to go off. So in team meetings are not super helpful because we're always worried that he's going to start throwing chairs, to be quite honest. He gets verbally aggressive, he threatens people, and he usually storms off, and the team doesn't even, we don't even know what we said sometimes. So the things that were the most helpful in this team was definitely to start thinking about low and slow. That is super important, right? To really only take on a few things at a meeting. Short meetings was big. Honoring everybody's feelings in that meeting. And I want to say, this isn't only about Alan. Again, yes, we all were pretty good about tiptoeing around Alan, but Alan's guardian, who raised him, who had all the same background and childhood experiences, she had just as short a fuse. We weren't paying attention to that for a long time. It was always Alan's fault because he would set off everybody. Well, we realized pretty quickly that it was also how everybody else was reacting. He would say something negative, grandma would, just go off, and then that would set him off. And then we just had that whole thing. So we had to also use those skills for reflect, honoring, connecting, and all that with grandma, right? And what we ended up really doing at that point was teaching the Handbrain. We talk about setting the tone in a meeting. So what did I do for the beginning of the meeting for 5 minutes? I said, listen, I want us all to look at this. And I gave a little primer about this is how all of our brains work, every single one in this room. And we watched the Handbrain video that you guys watched. And I said to the team, and I'll be honest, I was not the assigned SSA. I had the privilege of coming in. This could be a supervisor's role, could be another SSA's role. I came in because the SSA was like, what? You're crazy. I'm not going to show a video about the Handbrain during my team meeting. I'm like, okay, I'll do that for you. So I came in, I showed it, and I looked like the expert, right? And I said, what I would suggest for this team from now on is for us to use hand signals. If people are feeling at all offline, just put your hand up, right? Just put your hand up. That way we know to all come back down quicker. We don't have to wait until somebody actually verbalizes it or stands up or throws a chair. And so we really practiced what it's like to feel offline. How do we get back online? How do we feel safe? What are our things? And I would say, so during that first meeting, Alan did go kind of off after about 20 minutes maybe, which is pretty much his ability to stick in a meeting anyways. So I left with Alan, and he and I went out and we talked about it. We went over the Handbrain again, and we talked about what makes you feel calm. How can we help you put the lid on it? How, all those things. The next meeting, we reminded everybody, we didn't show the video, but we did remind everybody the Handbrain is an option. Let us know if you're going offline. It was just a good meeting. We lucked out, right? The next meeting, all of a sudden, everything's going well. And what do I see from grandma? She puts her hands up. I go, is your hand up? And she goes, I think I'm offline. It was so cute. She was stressed. There was one little thing that was said that she took very personally. We got it out. We were transparent. It was amazing, right? And it was after that a few times that Alan actually used it before he walked out the door, which I felt was a big win, right? He went like this, he walked out the door, and nobody panicked because we knew what he was doing. So I'm just saying, this is not, I feel like we tend to put things only with disabilities, right? And what we found out when we thought about all those things and we spent time with him and we connected with him on a one-to-one basis, and the guardian, similar story from Gladys and B was Alan has a trauma history, right? Guardian's fears get in the way. Alan's had 5 different provider agencies within 2 years. He just wants people to listen to him. He doesn't really want to be part of the DD field, by the way, right? He's got 24-hour staffing. There's no privacy. He never is by himself. Meetings were the one time that people let him walk out and sit by himself outside because they thought he was in a safe place. When he went home, he couldn't get away. The Handbrain really helped Alan and his team, at least in the short time when we were actively, intentionally bringing it up and using it. Can't say whether or not that's still happening at all. It was brief. I hope it is. But I would really, with those people or those bullies or the guardians, teach them, when it's the right time, right? After you've connected, after you've created a little bit, and explain to them, this isn't just about you. This is me too. I'm operating in that kind of area sometimes too. All right, go for it.
We are going to talk about 3 other strategies for de-escalation. And this is from a video called How to De-Escalate Someone by Dr. Christian Conti. And he's a psychologist who works with court and prison systems. So he has a little bit different perspective, but still very applicable to our world as well. So the first strategy is validate, acknowledging how people feel. They're upset. There's no right or wrong in feelings. There's right or wrong in actions, but there isn't right or wrong in feelings. Validate until they feel validated and you see them release or coming down a little bit. Sometimes one validating statement isn't enough. So moving on, the next one is to help the person once they feel, you can go to the next slide.
Thanks, sorry.
Help the person find options. So once they feel validation, they might be more open to what options they have. They have the ultimate choice how to act. We all know that. And we want to help them explore what those actions are. So we can say, like, you can throw this chair. I know you're angry. Let's look at what happens as a result of throwing the chair. And it helps to step back and take a look at other options. You could throw the chair. You could also walk away. You can sit down with me. You could take some deep breaths, offer some options of what they might be able to do next. Microvision, I like this visual here. Microvision is focused on one thing or the anger. That's usually what the person has. But macrovision is what you have as the outsider. The ability to see the big picture, especially for somebody who's not necessarily emotionally involved. So on to the next slide. The third is to allow for choice. Recognize that the person has choice, that you acknowledge that they can choose what their actions are going to be. You accept that they have free will. Once the person feels that respect and they feel that acceptance of what their choice is, sometimes there's no reason to fight anymore for their position. So that further helps to de-escalate them. Next slide. How to end an interaction after that de-escalation. Make sure that they're feeling okay. Never walk away unless somebody is really feeling okay and says, yeah, I'm good now. I think I can move forward and we can talk next week about this. Make sure you set up the next steps with somebody. It doesn't have to be right then, but set up the next steps and follow through with those next steps, because I promise you, if you don't do the follow-up, be prepared to have more interactions that need de-escalation.
Yeah, even if the follow-up isn't good news or it's not what you were hoping it to be, or
Correct.
you don't have an answer, even if you don't have an answer, like
Right.
follow up and say, I don't have an answer yet.
Absolutely.
I promise this.
Okay, you could go on. I'm done.
Okay. This is just back to the B and Gladys, right? So we heard about her sister. She's emotional. We tried all these kind of things. We tried to validate and help her find options and make choices, and have more follow through. We really did find out and move. Now, this was not fast. And this is the other thing. Patience is a virtue. We probably should have put that as a, tough discussions don't happen. We didn't solve this in a month, right? This was a multi-year process. But guess what? We work with people from, birth to death often, not all the times, but often. And for B, we worked with her for a good 20 years. So if we've had a good last 3 or 4 years, then those first 5 will just, chalk it up. But we found out great information by really spending time, really reflecting, honoring, correcting, validating her, helping her look at her options. This is also about, Gladys, her guardian. And what we really found out was that, B really needed a lot of validation. Her sister had done that for probably 60 years at that point, right? She had been validating. She was exhausted at validating. She was done. So she needed to have the permission to say, you're not that person anymore. Other people can do that. And that's okay. It doesn't mean anything bad about you. B does do really well with options, better given by other people than her sister, because she's very reliant on her sister. She doesn't trust her own decisions and she looks to others for approval. So it was really hard for her to make decisions if Gladys isn't going to give her approval or validation. And she was just like, just decide, and But with other people, we were like, well, that could be really good. And we were much easier. So an outside person or a new person with a different relationship was a much better person to go over those options. So we had to check with the guardian, Gladys, and see what are the options. And then we had to take those back to her. It wasn't about, so that we didn't have a lot of drama. We learned that B's natural tendency is to complain all the time. And Holly is nodding. That's the B that Holly knew well, right? Right, Holly?
Yes. Yes. We're still combating that, but we're working on it.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask her what's been going on, that you might as well just say what bugs you more than anything else in your entire life. That's really what she hears. And so you have to let her say that. You got to validate that must be hard. And then you can move on to saying more specific questions like what's been going good? How did this work out? How did that work out? And give her very specifics. Her sister wasn't good at that, by the way. She calls her on the phone. What's going on? Right. So both of them are much calmer. I found out that Gladys was a bully around her because of the dynamics. But when I spent time with her separately or on the phone and she knew I cared, she was not a bully at all. She was amazing. The meetings needed to happen separately. One of the main things we decided was I helped Gladys the guardian come to the fruition that she doesn't need to be in the room at ISP meetings. She needs to know what's being talked about. She needed to know what is going on and what the options are. She needed to know what the team's input was, but then she can help make those decisions. And she was much better, but she needed to trust me that I was going to tell her everything that was going on, that I was going to check in with her. Sometimes she got in by phone instead. But they couldn't be in the same room. And I'm not a mental health expert. I can't make that better. Like that is not my thing. I encourage both of them to go to mental health, but that is not my thing. So we didn't have her in the meeting. And what we did find out was that everybody had that same shared vision. We all wanted B to be happy and cared for and safe and have a life. And so it was really good and lots of good things. And Holly, do you want to tell real quick what B's doing these days?
Wow. This lady is very busy, going on cruises, visiting things that have to do with Elvis, making videos, hopping in limos and having her nails done, you name it. Oh, she also has made some community film fest videos. She's just a very busy, happy lady. When you help her focus on the positive, you just would not believe where her life is. It is beautiful.
And Holly, is Gladys still her guardian?
No. She stepped back from that role and is doing much better since she is not having to take that responsibility. And she's able to just learn about what's going on in B's life, sort of from the sidelines a little bit, and then just be involved when she feels comfortable and I guess safe to do so without causing herself to get offline.
Yeah. And I'll say from my perspective, there's not a lot of, it's not the storybook relationship between the sisters, right? Like they don't spend a lot of time together still. We didn't solve that problem, right?
Right.
But is the team easier to have a team meeting and talk about with the new guardian and with the new provider where she lives in a shared living? I mean, 100 times better, right?
Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to saying no, because this is always hard. Oh, it's hard. Tiffany, tell us how to say no, please. I don't like
Yes. So I'll go ahead and get started here, but certainly if you guys would consider telling us what situations you do find difficult to say no to in the chat box, and maybe our panelists can shout those out as I continue to talk here.
Perfect.
So next slide, please. So for most of us, of course, saying no can be a real challenge. Thus, learning how to say no politely is another vital skill that we need to develop as SSAs. For many of us, it's innate in that we like to people please and help others. I think that's just the classic definition of social workers. Therefore, of course, it can be tempting to say yes to every individual, guardian, or situation or request. When you say yes to every request that comes your way, certainly your calendar can fill up or your to-do list can grow. And before you know it, You certainly could be burning the candle at both ends, or two, you may be putting yourself in a position to say yes when you shouldn't be. Therefore, you could put yourself in a position for a disciplinary action with your supervisor. For example, if you commit the county board to something, maybe financially or something along those lines. But regardless, whatever the situation is, you're going to run into situations where it's in your best interest to say no, or sometimes even maybe. So of course, we want to set boundaries, and saying no is important, but so is maintaining those positive relationships, which is why it's necessary that we try to play nice. And I know we sometimes get tired of playing nice, but I think we all know a little politeness goes a long way when we do say no. So certainly including useful phrases with politeness could diffuse a situation and help get others to feel better about you saying no. So some of those phrases you might want to say, I'm just throwing out a few here. I'd love to, but we really need to consider, or perhaps that would be great, but rule only permits X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So again, buffering your no with some politeness, or as we noted here, many call it putting on kids' gloves, can make your no easier for others to hear, which can go a long way in preserving that relationship that you have, again, with a provider, individual, or whomever. So certainly too, for many people, saying yes is a knee-jerk reaction. Some people ask you to do something extra, or perhaps during a planning meeting, they ask for extra hours or extra miles, and you just say yes. If this resonates with you and you immediately say yes to every request, the best way to learn to say no is to take your time, take a breather. Instead of immediately responding, like saying yes, maybe take a few hours to sit with it, or say you need to bounce some things off of your coworkers or supervisors, or take a peek at their budget before you commit to anything. So essentially, by not immediately jumping on every opportunity and reactively saying yes, you give yourself actually a little bit of a time to figure out a way to politely say no. So a strategy that you could perhaps use as, again, when it comes to saying no and politeness going a long way, so can it with a little bit of positivity. So most team members will be more receptive to a no or decline if you soften the blow with a positive or two. If you need to say no, perhaps try sandwiching it between two yeses. And then when you use that sandwich between two yeses, it will leave the team members with an overall positive sentiment towards you, or even the county board, when you have to say no. So, and I think we've touched on this before, but when we say no, we certainly want to offer alternatives, or again, perhaps maybe is the answer at this point. Sometimes the reason you're saying no is maybe more of a matter of logistics, or in fact rule or rule definition, than not us actually wanting to help. I find myself saying that more to my team members. I really wish these families or individuals would know that we really do want to help them. We don't like these situations that create conflict, but there's reasons behind why we have to say no. If this is the case, again, offering an alternative is a great way to transform that no into a yes. So should the request be something that's outside of your scope of saying yes to, it's okay. And in fact, most supervisors would probably prefer that you say, this could be a possibility, or maybe, and that you need to go to your supervisor to get some direction, because you certainly don't want to set yourself up for saying yes and then having to go back and retract what you've stated. So, and then you guys have heard this many times before, but explaining the why. When you have to say no, part of being polite is explaining yourself and providing documentation. And that, again, could be rule, or maybe county board policies could be helpful in your explanation. But with a proper explanation, most will understand the reason behind your no, which then could lead to helping them accept it a little more. However, I do want you to keep in mind that, of course, there's explaining and then there is over explaining. So I hope you're not thinking I'm doing that right now. But anyhow, you don't need to give a million reasons why to justify saying no. You should feel the need, or excuse me, you shouldn't feel the need to go overboard with your explaining, which kind of turns into making excuses. So explain again the reason why you're saying no and apologize that you can't make it happen, but do so in a direct and assertive way. And lastly, we want them to understand that we're not saying no to them, or excuse me, we're not saying no to them. Yes, we're saying no to the request. So some people take the word no harder than others, and they certainly oftentimes take it personal. So again, you need to be intentional about clarifying the reasons why around that.
When you were talking, Tiffany, I was thinking it sounds exactly like when I talk to my husband. It's like, I got good news and bad news, right? Like I always tell him the bad news first, and then I like try to get that good news in, right? But like, you got to, whenever I have bad news for him, I try to find good news too. So it is all about
sandwich.
Absolutely. I love the comments in the chat box. There's a lot of mix. We struggled on this topic. We know it's really hard, but some of us have a more difficult time saying no to clients, like about waiver services and that kind of stuff. And then other people, it was about saying no in general to, like, doing extra work, your supervisors taking on projects, going to the movies, overcommitting outside of work. So, but really, when you look at it, it's all very similar. The thing, you just have to really figure out which one are you bad at. And I think my number one thing is start practicing saying, let me look into that, right? Like, give yourself a pause, a minute, because even when you say things like, well, the rules don't allow that, I'm just going to tell you, you don't always really know that. That's sometimes word of mouth. And I'll tell you, if any of you were on my self-direction, when rules are changing, right? And county policies change. So it's always good to just, if it's something that's very like, take a minute, but then then go do your homework and really find out that you have the right answer. It's so easy to just say no if you're a no person, just like it's easy to say yes if you're a yes person. Practice being a maybe person and give yourself a little more time. I think that it's very helpful to do that. All right.
Precisely.
I did it with you.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so we're moving along to the right way to apologize. So you probably, or we, I should say, collectively say sorry in a day's time, a fair amount of time, whether that's for something that you did or something that was done to others. However, most of us don't really think about how we go about making these apologies, especially when we don't feel we're 100% responsible. I think Lynne had touched on this a little bit, but again, especially when we don't feel we're 100% responsible for what had happened. Instead, we just simply blurt them out and really don't think about it again after we say we're sorry. As anyone who thinks they deserve a more genuine apology, if they don't receive it, it certainly can make them dislike you or distrust you. So it maybe sounds a little obvious to you, but you'd be surprised at how many people apologize with actually not saying these two words of I'm sorry. They may say things like, I realize I made a mistake, or I understand you were hurt. I feel bad. These are all certainly great prefaces, but they don't actually mean the same thing as I'm sorry. So no matter what happened or who was in the wrong, or maybe how drastic the situation was, if it went down hurting somebody or maybe offending somebody else, you certainly want to use the words that I'm sorry or that you're sorry. Again, well, I don't think I said this before, but I just said again. Anyhow, you only really mean it when you say it out loud. So too, we want to be sure to be respectful, to address the person when you're apologizing by name, whether they're a coworker or just a team member. And I don't mean just a team member, but a team member. This adds sincerity to what you're saying. Addressing them by name shows that you're considering how your actions or the action in general affected them directly and personally. 2, say what you're sorry for. So the person on the receiving end knows that you're not just sorry in the situation, but you're sorry about what put you there. Make it clear that you understand the consequences and effects on the situation or decision that was made. By simply stating the impact, you're making it clear to the person that you know why you're having that conversation. And the bonus part about this step is that it lets you take responsibility for part of what happened, however, without taking the collective responsibility for the large scale of the disaster or maybe the team being derailed. Also, this is an interesting statistic. Words comprise only 7% of the message you send off. I thought it would be low, but I certainly didn't think it would be low 10%. But nonetheless, your body language, tone, and eye contact all reflect how you feel about something. So we really need to make sure that those are in check when we're having conversations with team members. Even over the phone, yes, again, that tone or the inflections in your voice, they can pick up on those types of things. So think about it. If somebody was saying, sorry to you, whether as they're crossing their arms or maybe looking at the floor, I mean, I don't think we all would certainly believe that. But instead, we would prefer that the person, whoever is telling us sorry or that we're speaking to, we want to keep our body open and welcoming, such as having your arms to your side and your shoulders to your back. And then, of course, if you aren't sincere with your apology, it may be best to engage in an open conversation with the other person about the situation instead. This can help both you understand each other better, and you may discover that the situation does warrant an apology from you. An insincere apology can send the wrong impression to others, which can damage your working relationship. So it's important there to validate how the other person feels. Even if you don't understand their exact position in the matter, acknowledging their feelings and forming your apology in a way that shows you believe their feelings are valid can make a huge difference. If possible, you should, again, I think I touched on this before, maybe include their feelings in your statement, like I recognize you're upset or etc. Some things to think about. And again, we want to avoid excuses. I know it's super instinctual of us to backtrack on something once we've put it out there. We're afraid of looking bad, or so many times we follow our apology up with a but or a well, essentially to kind of make it seem that it wasn't our fault. But saying sorry genuinely is about admitting you're wrong and owning it. So when you're inclined to tag on an excuse, try to resist that urge, although I know it's difficult. And I recognize that with myself, it is. Sure, again, your apologies sometimes might be followed up by awkward silence. I think Lynne had mentioned this as well, but you need to accept that silence. Everything doesn't always go right itself immediately. So after this, you can offer some resolve, or once you've said it, show you're willing to fix the mistake, or talk about the solution of moving the team forward. If you can't this time, because what's done is done, then you need to explain how you avoid it, and again, reduce it maybe in a recurring situation. And then we want to keep our promises. Once you've shared how you're going to try to correct the mistake or help the solution, you need to keep your promises. Failing to follow through on your word can essentially negate the positive benefits of your apology and also make it harder for others to trust you. If you do everything you promised,
no, go ahead, Tiffany. I was just
going to say, if you do everything you promised you would, it reiterates your sincerity and shows that you're committed to a cohesive, relationship with your team members.
Tiffany, I'm going to go through these slides real quick, just because our time is going, and I really want to get to Kristina's scenario really quick. Sure. So I love this slide. Make sure you look at this. There's really important, we talked about this in the first session a lot, about how do you communicate that apology, right? I mean, you want to apologize as soon as you realize it's needed, so that and you're ready to do it, but also the best way, different generations, different people want it different ways, right? A lot of times in person is the best, but there are some people that feel more comfortable with that email, text, phone. So, you know, think about those topics that we talked about last time. And I love this, Tiffany, right? It's what if we don't apologize, right? Why is it so important to apologize? I mean, we've talked about that, but more like on that last one, if you don't apologize, what's probably going to happen is those poor relationships and, you know, incorrect impressions about each other. People will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So that apology gets that good feeling going. So Kristina, tell us in the last couple minutes, tell us your scenario of how that, you know, how has that apology affected a team meeting for you?
Sure. So I actually have a scenario here in which APSI was loosely involved in this situation. But the individual is Lucy. She's 53-year-old paraplegic. She has significant respiratory and cardiac issues that often would lead her to hospitalizations. Her hospitalizations often would be for things like aspiration pneumonia, which was her most common issue for being hospitalized. She had a family guardian. The guardian was her sister-in-law, and her sister-in-law also happened to be a nurse. And her sister-in-law put in a do not resuscitate order in place for Lucy. The county board and the residential provider had concerns about this code status being put in place, and they had repeated disagreements with the guardian regarding medical treatment plans that the guardian was asking for. What the guardian was asking for was that Lucy not be sent to the hospital should she need, treatment. The provider and the county board had a variety of concerns, including liability. They also were concerned about neglect of care, because if the aspiration pneumonia could be actually treated and resolved and she could return home, then why wouldn't they send her? So those are some of the concerns that the team had. Team meetings between this team was always in the storming process. They never got out of the storming process. They never made it to the norming process ever. And part of it had to do with the team interactions in team meeting situations. One-on-one, the SSA did a really good job of trying to communicate with all parties. But when the team meetings came to be, the guardian is someone who often would be perceived as a bully. In fact, she is a very direct individual. And her perception of her tone of voice set everybody off in the defensive in these team meetings. It did not help that the SSA supervisor, who often sat in these team meetings, her body language was less than helpful as well, and would often be seen with sighs, eye rolls, arms crossed. So on both sides, there was inability to understand or communicate effectively with each other. The provider and the county board were so concerned about the guardian's decisions and regarding the medical treatment, that they actually decided to take the case to the superior guardian, which was the probate court. And they wrote a letter of complaint or concern to the court about the decision-making of the guardian. Court hearing was held, and testimony was given. The court decided they didn't have enough information to proceed on whether to remove the guardian or what direction they wanted to go. So they brought in a neutral party to be an independent assessor, to review all medical records, to talk to all personnel, and to give an independent assessment and recommendations to the court on the steps forward. What was discovered in this was that the guardian was well within her right in the decision-making that was going on. One of the things, because of the dysfunction within the team, was that the team failed to understand that the guardian wasn't just a nurse. She was a nursing director of a critical care unit in a trauma 1 hospital in the region, who had connections both internally and externally at the medical level, and realized that she could render the same services that the individual would be getting in the hospital setting in the home setting. She could get antibiotics, she could get oxygen, she could get breathing treatments, and that moving the individual to the hospital, moving Lucy to the hospital, was often highly traumatizing for her and caused her a lot of stress. So why wouldn't we try to remedy the situation in a home setting. That was never able to be completely clearly communicated within the team because everyone was already up in arms and not in a communicating way. Ultimately, what ended up happening is that the SSA and the SSA supervisor apologized in this case. The guardian did not accept the initial apology because the SSA supervisor's tone of voice was less than sincere. So the apology ended up having to be escalated up to the SSA director and the superintendent level to sit down with the family face to face, come to resolutions, come to a plan of action on how they could proceed, which included changing the SSA and SSA supervisor, so switching the teams that this individual will be served by, and creating a point of contact with the SSA director for this family should issues begin to escalate in the future. So this was a situation that went very nuclear for a lack of communication that ended up having to be at the top level apologies rendered in order to get the team back in a functioning capacity.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one, Kristina. I'm telling you, APSI, you guys get all the good stories. I think it's so important that for some reason, I know we're all very empathetic as SSAs, but I also know that we think we're right all the time. I do. I should say we. I should say I think I'm right most of the time, right? And so it is hard when you realize you didn't have all the information or that you had the incorrect information. And let me tell you, since I've worked at a state level, I had a lot of incorrect information back in the day. My fault, some of it was my superiors not telling me things. Sometimes it was because I just didn't know, right? You just don't know it all. So, it's okay to say I didn't know and I was wrong, right? And I think that is so important. Yeah. Wow.
And being willing to listen to others' points of view and put your own belief aside. And one of the other things that was recommended at this point was additional training on community resources, especially in the medical realm, so that the individual could continue receiving the less restrictive services possible.
I want to point out Nicole's comment in the chat box. I really appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you. We try to catch things like that. And by the way, we're sorry. See, you did that just so we'd have to apologize. That's why she did it. I am truly sorry because sometimes we don't read it through. So very sorry. You're right. The shift of thinking about the way of wording that a little better is that she's a 53-year-old person first is the most important. So thanks for pointing that out to us. And I do really appreciate that. All right. Well, I know it's past 11. I'm sorry. We just can't stop. We have a pep time talk in here, which we won't put on because it's 11:05, but we hope you'll go watch it. I really am tempted. I really want to watch it. We hope you got some good takeaways from today. And, I hope you try something if you have time and put one thing you're going to do different when you walk away from today in the chat box would be amazing. If you have time, we'll hang on in here. Feel free to put that in there because we really hope, we know we didn't give you the recipe for handling everything, but we hope we made you think about maybe which of these areas is harder for you that you could work on a little differently, whether it's apologizing or finding better ways to say no, or maybe just spending a little time getting to know the different team members and realizing how to help calm people. Those are all great topics that we really hope that you have time to think about and try something new. Practice. So I thought about that with the sorry. How do you get better at saying sorry? You practice it, right? How do you get better at any of this? We practice it. And there's some kind of ridiculous statistic, like how many times you have to do something for it to become a true habit ingrained in you. How many times, same with saying no, right? I used to work in eligibility and you guys talked about saying no to somebody for a waiver. That is hard, but let me tell you, telling somebody no to eligibility for county board services who really thinks that this is the answer to all of their problems, one of the hardest things I've ever done. But the more I did it, the more I came up with my own way that I could say it and sleep at night and feel good about it. And it did get better. So here's our contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to us with specifics or you're really struggling, we gave these because we're willing to chat, talk, email, whatever you want to do about these things. We know that you are all doing really good work out there and you work really hard and you come up with some really difficult conversations. So we value everything that you guys do. Thank you so much. And then we do have resources here for you also with some of the videos that we showed today. There's our first training, the tools that we talked about, and we do have a couple other resources that are in the PDF about that we just shared that we didn't really have time to talk about. So on that note, please, thank you. We hope that this was helpful. Thanks for those comments. I love in there that lower and slower was really helpful and makes a lot of sense to people. That's great. Make sure you watch that video on a regular basis. Lisa, you asked a great Q&A question about what do you do when somebody, when you apologize and nobody else does, right? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Are you married to my husband? Because I don't know. You use patience. You use modeling. You worry about controlling your behavior and not everybody else's, because gosh knows we can't make other people be genuine. But I really appreciate it that you guys are here today, and I hope that it finds helpful. And anybody with big questions, ask. Otherwise, we'll be logging off in a couple minutes. I'm going to stop sharing. And there we are, panelists. Look at them. Let's look at our comments. Make sure we didn't miss anybody that's hanging out. They're all leaving. We're jumping out. But we got lots of thanks. Lots of thanks. I like people talking about they want to pay more attention to what stage they're in. I like that. That was Judy. Judy, you're my fave. One of my favorite people out there in Ohio. Lower and slower was helpful. Taking a break before things get too escalated. I like that. Yes. And working on saying no or pausing. Love it. Saying, I know that must be really hard. Introducing the Handbrain. Somebody's going to have the guts. Go. Be crazy. Love it. Slow down. Great information. Bringing in a neutral party. I love that. That's a great one. Getting to know my team members better before jumping into problem solving. Yes. Saying no. Awesome. We did so good, everybody. Okay, everybody try to do your high five. Give the screen a high five, and we really appreciate SSAs everywhere. All right, I'm gonna shut it down, ladies. I'll send out an email to you guys with some summary stuff. Thank you for all you guys did too. All right, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.